Welcome, dear listener, to a special storytelling session that will take you back to one of comedy's most cherished moments. As you settle in and make yourself comfortable, allow your mind to drift into the world of classic television comedy, where laughter flowed freely and improvisation was an art form. Today, I'll be sharing with you the famous Tim Conway elephant story, a tale that has brought tears of laughter to millions and stands as a testament to the brilliant comedic mind of one of television's greatest performers. Tim Conway was known for his extraordinary ability to make people laugh, not just the audience at home, but his fellow performers, right there on stage. This particular story became legendary, not only for its content, but for the way it completely broke down his castmates during filming of The Carol Burnett Show, creating one of television's most genuine and uncontrollable moments of pure, spontaneous laughter. Before we dive into the heart of our story, let me paint a picture of Tim Conway for those who might not be familiar with this comedy genius. Born on December 15th, 1933, in Willoughby, Ohio, Thomas Daniel Conway would later become known simply as Tim Conway, a name that would become synonymous with impeccable comedic timing and the ability to reduce audiences and fellow performers alike to helpless laughter. With his gentle demeanor, kind eyes, and unassuming presence, Tim had a unique ability to transform himself into wildly entertaining characters within seconds. The setting for our story takes place during the filming of The Carol Burnett Show, a variety and sketch comedy program that ran from 1967 to 1978, becoming one of the most beloved television shows in American history. The show featured a regular cast of incredibly talented performers, including Carol Burnett herself, Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, and of course, Tim Conway. What made this show particularly special was not just the scripted comedy, but the unscripted moments when the performers would try to make each other laugh, breaking character in what the industry affectionately calls corpsing. The studio buzzed with the energy of anticipation that day. The lights were bright, the cameras were positioned, and the audience was settled in their seats, ready for another evening of entertainment. Little did they know they were about to witness comedy history in the making, a moment that would be talked about, replayed, and cherished for decades to come. Tim Conway had a mischievous glint in his eye that day. The cast was rehearsing a sketch called The Family, where Vicki Lawrence played Mama and Harvey Korman played her son-in-law. Tim was playing the role of Mickey Hart, a somewhat slow-witted character who worked at the local Western Union office. The sketch was already funny on paper, but Tim had something special planned, something not in the script, something he had been saving for the live taping. As the cameras began rolling, the sketch progressed normally at first. The dialogue flowed, the audience chuckled at the intended jokes, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. Then came Tim's moment to share a story with the family, and that's when he veered dramatically from the script with perfect comedic timing and his characteristic slight stutter. Tim began to tell a story about an elephant. His voice took on that special quality that signaled to his castmates that something unexpected was coming. A slight tremor, a careful modulation that drew listeners in. His eyes widened just enough to communicate innocence and sincerity as he launched into his tale. "You know," he began, his voice gentle but clear. I once went to the circus when I was a little boy, and there was this elephant, this enormous gray elephant with eyes so small yet so expressive that I felt like he was looking right into my soul. My father had bought me peanuts to feed this magnificent creature, and I was so excited, my little hands trembling as I approached the massive animal. Harvey Korman, known for being unable to keep a straight face during Tim's improvisations, was already beginning to show signs of cracking. His lips quivered slightly as he tried desperately to maintain his composure. The rest of the cast, sensing what was happening, braced themselves for what was coming. Tim continued, his pacing deliberately slow, stretching out the anticipation. This elephant, he reached out with his trunk, so gently, you wouldn't believe how gentle an elephant's trunk can be, and he took the peanut from my hand. I could feel the soft, velvety texture of his trunk against my palm. It was warm and slightly moist, like a soft breeze on a humid summer evening. The audience began to laugh, not just at the story itself, but at the visible struggle of Harvey Korman, who was beginning to break. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as he fought against the laughter building inside him. The camera operators, knowing gold when they saw it, made sure to capture both Tim's deadpan delivery and Harvey's impending comedic collapse. But then, Tim said, his voice dropping to an almost conspiratorial whisper, something unexpected happened. The elephant, this massive creature weighing thousands of pounds, suddenly seemed to recognize me. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could an elephant recognize a small boy he'd never met before? But I swear to you, there was a glimmer of recognition in those tiny eyes. By this point, Harvey was visibly shaking with suppressed laughter. His face had turned a shade of red that suggested he might burst at any moment. Vicki Lawrence, showing remarkable professional control, managed to maintain her mama character, though a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth betrayed her amusement. Tim, ever the master of his craft, noticed Harvey's distress and, rather than backing off, doubled down. He slowed his speech even further, adding unnecessary and increasingly absurd details to his elephant encounter, each one pushing Harvey closer to the edge. The elephant's trainer noticed this unusual connection between me and the elephant. He was a short man with a handlebar mustache that seemed to have a life of its own. He approached me and said in a thick accent that I couldn't quite place, somewhere between Hungarian and Martian, "Young boy, this elephant, he likes you. Perhaps you have met in another life." And I, being only 7 years old and not yet versed in the theories of reincarnation, simply nodded as if this made perfect sense. The studio audience was in stitches now, their laughter growing with each elaboration Tim added to his tale. The director, recognizing the magic happening before him, signaled to the camera operators to stay with the shot, capturing every nuance of this unplanned comedy gold. The trainer then did something extraordinary. Tim continued, his face a perfect mask of earnestness. He invited me to come backstage, behind the main tent, to meet the elephant properly. My father, apparently unconcerned about sending his young son off with a strange man and an elephant, readily agreed. I followed the trainer through a maze of ropes and tent poles, the smell of sawdust and animal mingling in the air, until we reached a clearing where several elephants were resting. Harvey Korman was now holding onto the edge of the table for support, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. Tears were forming in his eyes, and his breathing had become irregular. The more he tried to compose himself, the more hilarious Tim's deadpan delivery became to him. My elephant, for I had already begun to think of him as mine, was standing slightly apart from the others. The trainer led me to him, and, to my astonishment, the elephant immediately extended his trunk toward me, as if offering a handshake. "He remembers you from the ancient times," the trainer said, again with that mysterious accent. "In elephant culture, this is a great honor." A single tear escaped Harvey's eye and rolled down his cheek as he valiantly attempted to stay in character. Carol Burnett, watching from just off camera, had to cover her mouth with her hand to stifle her own laughter. Tim, sensing victory was near, went for the comedic kill. What happened next, I was not prepared for. The elephant, moving with unexpected grace for such a large creature, slowly bent his front legs and lowered himself to the ground. The trainer, his mustache twitching with excitement, said to me, "He is bowing to you. He wants you to ride him." And before I could process what was happening, I was being lifted onto the elephant's back. Harvey Korman finally broke completely. A sound escaped him that was part gasp, part laugh, and part surrender. He bent forward, his face now hidden from the camera, as his body convulsed with uncontrollable laughter. The audience, seeing Harvey's breakdown, laughed even harder, creating a feedback loop of hilarity that threatened to derail the entire sketch. Tim, ever the professional, continued his story without acknowledging Harvey's state, which only made the situation funnier. Sitting atop this magnificent animal, I felt like a king surveying his kingdom. The elephant, seeming to sense my royal thoughts, raised his trunk and let out a sound that I can only describe as a trumpet of allegiance. The other elephants, responding to this call, formed a circle around us and began to sway in what appeared to be some sort of elephant dance. By this point, the entire cast was struggling. Vicki Lawrence, despite her best efforts, had a smile breaking through her mama scowl. Carol Burnett, still off camera, had tears streaming down her face. The crew members were biting their lips or covering their mouths, trying not to let their laughter be picked up by the microphones. Tim, showing no mercy, pressed on with his increasingly elaborate tale. The trainer explained to me that I had been chosen by the elephants for a special ceremony that happens only once every 100 years. "They will now anoint you with the sacred water," he said, his eyes wide with reverence. I didn't understand what he meant until I saw my elephant fill his trunk with water from a nearby bucket. Harvey Korman, who had momentarily regained a semblance of composure, lost it again at this point. He was now laughing so hard that no sound was coming out, just silent shaking as tears streamed down his face. The audience, seeing his reaction, roared with laughter. The elephant raised his trunk high above my head, and with a gentleness that belied his enormous size, sprinkled the water over me in what felt like a baptism of sorts. The water was surprisingly warm and smelled faintly of peanuts. As the droplets fell on my upturned face, the trainer began to chant in a language that sounded ancient and mysterious. Tim paused here, allowing a moment for the laughter to subside slightly before delivering his final comedic blow. And that, my friends, is why to this day, whenever I see an elephant, I feel compelled to bow and offer it a peanut. And if you look very closely, you might notice that the elephant always bows back, recognizing me as one of their own, an honorary elephant blessed by the sacred peanut-scented water. The sketch, of course, could not continue as planned. Harvey Korman was beyond recovery, and the rest of the cast wasn't far behind. The director, recognizing that this moment of genuine, unscripted hilarity was far better than anything they had planned, let the cameras continue rolling, capturing one of television's most memorable moments of spontaneous comedy. What made Tim Conway's elephant story so special wasn't just the absurdity of the tale itself, but the way he delivered it, with such earnestness, such commitment to the bit that even his fellow professional comedians couldn't maintain their composure. It was a masterclass in comedic timing, in knowing exactly how to pace a story for maximum impact, in understanding the power of anticipation and release. In later interviews, both Carol Burnett and Vicki Lawrence would recall this moment as one of the funniest in the show's history. Harvey Korman, when asked about working with Tim Conway, would often cite the elephant story as both the most challenging and the most joyful experience of his career. A moment when the line between performance and genuine reaction disappeared entirely. The elephant story became legendary among fans of The Carol Burnett Show, often cited as the perfect example of Tim Conway's unique comedic genius. It showcased his ability to improvise, to read his fellow performers and the audience, to find the perfect moment to push a joke just a little further than expected. Years later, comedy writers and performers would study this moment, trying to understand what made it so special, so genuinely funny. The conclusion many came to was that it wasn't just about the words Tim Conway spoke, but about the connection he created between himself and his castmates, between the cast and the audience, between all of them and the pure, uncomplicated joy of shared laughter. Tim Conway's elephant story reminds us of the healing power of laughter, of the way a well-told tale can bring people together across generations. It stands as a testament to the special magic that can happen when talented performers are given the freedom to play, to explore, to surprise each other and themselves. As our story comes to a close, imagine Tim Conway looking out at the audience that day, a twinkle in his eye as he witnessed the joy his improvisation had brought to everyone in that studio. In that moment, he wasn't just a comedian doing his job. He was a storyteller in the oldest tradition, creating a moment of connection and shared humanity through the simple act of telling a tale. And perhaps, somewhere out there, there's an elephant who remembers a small boy at the circus many years ago who would grow up to tell stories that would make the world laugh. Perhaps that elephant still raises its trunk in salute whenever it hears the name Tim Conway, honoring the man who, through his wonderful imagination and perfect comedic timing, made an ordinary elephant the star of an extraordinary story. As you drift toward sleep tonight, carry with you the lightness and joy that Tim Conway's elephant story has brought to so many. Let the gentle rhythm of shared laughter soothe you into peaceful dreams, where perhaps you, too, might meet an elephant who bows to you and sprinkles you with sacred, peanut-scented water. Good night, dear listener. May your dreams be filled with stories that make your heart smile, just as Tim Conway's elephant story has made hearts smile for generations.